When I came to write this show, I didn't know what it was going to be about. The other shows, the last stand-up shows the last few years, they've always come off the back of something happening, like 90s Comedian was about all the fuss about Jerry Springer the Opera, and If You Prefer a Milder Comedian was off the back of trying to work out what kind of stand-up you should do now, having been on the telly. There's normally some kind of impetus. With this, I was sort of aware that because I've spent so much time just travelling around doing gigs and now looking after kids and being a dad, I hadn't really had any experiences or adventures or been in any kind of crisis. I wasn't in any kind of professional crisis either, really. So it wasn't really obvious what it was going to be about. And I thought, well, maybe you should embrace that and try and write a show about dad stuff, you know. But dad stuff seems like where comedians go to die, to me. It seems like the last resort, talking about being a dad and a parent. There's lots of good stuff about that, but it didn't seem like me either. So I wondered if the idea should sort of be that I'd tried to do a show about something more like what I'd normally do a show about, but that I hadn't been able to because it kept getting interrupted by dad stuff. And that's not the show this ended up being, but that was the initial premise for it, and there's lots of that in it. And weirdly, because I could sort of write and perform dad stuff in this show as if I didn't want to do dad stuff, as if it was being sort of thrust upon me, and as if I was doing it against my will, it meant I have started sort of writing dad stuff. And now I'm starting to feel comfortable with that, even though it's not something I could ever imagine doing 20 years ago. So it set me up quite well for a third series of comedy vehicle for BBC Two, in as much as I've now think I probably could actually write about being a middle-aged parent, because I tried to do it in this show in a sort of ironic way. Oh dear, it was a don't kids say the funniest things routine, wasn't it? And if you're a 44-year-old stand-up and you're in Sheffield on a Friday night talking about something funny your kids said, you should kill yourself, I think. I had an idea that the show should be about something, but that it was being interrupted by, against my will, by me ending up talking about kids and being a dad and driving around doing gigs. And in the end, I decided it would be a show about idealised notions of society and how we live. And partly this came out of the fact that you spend a lot of time on the road now, and you spend a lot of time going to different towns. You sort of notice that we seem to be in a state of flux about trying to rebuild ourselves and have these like dockland, wharfside living, and then you go past loads of kind of shopping estates at the side of motorways, and I started to think there's something about being on the road, travelling around, seeing that kind of society in flux, with kind of idealised notions of how we should live. I also started thinking a lot about Twitter and the internet and the idea that it's a kind of virtual community, and that a lot of people would have you believe this is a really great thing, that we've got this kind of virtual online utopia. But my own experiences are not always pleasant. As a kind of E or F-list celebrity, you find yourself being sort of really abused all the time, and I thought, well, I could talk about that. And then I started to think about what kind of places you see in these motorway side, wharf side developments. I thought about the big retail outlets, the trading units, and then I remember this place, Carpet Remnant World, which I think I'd seen somewhere around Sunderland, Newcastle. I looked it up on the internet, all the branches are closed now. There had been one in Sunderland. And I thought that's a really good title, because it sounds like world, like utopias and idealised notions of societies. But it's Carpet Remnant, which is sort of a bit rubbish as well. And it also made me think of kind of default routines you do early on about, we used to do a lot together in the double act on the radio about World of Leather and Kingdom of Leather, and the idea that these are actual places. And I started to think of them as kind of utopian, idealised, actual societies. And when I started thinking that the show should be about that and be interrupted by dad stuff, so it's like a comedian trying to write an important show about society and about how we behave collectively, but is interrupted by dad stuff, then I started thinking about intro music and outro music, and that's when it really started to come together. I started thinking about sort of early 70s kind of krautrock and hippie music, and like when it sounds like electronics meeting analog sounds, and sort of that music being about a kind of sci-fi idea of a better future world. Then I started listening to a lot of stuff on this label Ghostbox, who do music that sounds like 70s public information films a bit. And once I had that on while I was trying to put the show together, it all started to make sense. And a lot of shows is about set and setting, not just for the audience, but for you. And when I could hear that music playing in the dressing room before, like the full 22-minute version of Autobahn by Kraftwerk, I thought, yeah, Stewart Lee, the comedian, thinks he's written this show that is reflected by this music. It isn't. But Stewart, he hasn't written that show. He's written it, he's failed to. But he needs to go on in the state of mind as if he has done. So that's why all that music's in it and was playing before the show and whatever. So basically, when I opened the show in London in November, having done tryouts in Edinburgh in August of 2011 and a little bit at Soho Theatre in June, the idea of the show was that the comedian, Stewart Lee, was trying to write a show about idealised societies, but it was being sort of swamped and taken off in the wrong direction by the fact that he was a dad and all he knew about was kids stuff and driving around doing gigs. But by about halfway through the London run, it started to become a slightly more interesting show. And I wish that's the one they'd reviewed, to be honest. But what can I do? I've got nothing. I've got no stuff. I drive around, I look after kids, I've got nothing. I have no experiences, I don't know about anything to talk about. I drive round and round. 150 nights I was on the road last year, you know. I'm not complaining. I'm very lucky to be able to do this, and I enjoy performing. You know, not tonight, obviously. It's not enjoyable. It's interesting. It's not enjoyable. It's like being trapped in a thicket, trying to get out. You know, it's an interesting problem. It's not fun, is it? 150 nights, and you know, I used to like that in the 80s going round, but now everywhere's the same, you know. Sheffield's quite interesting, keeps changing. It'd be nice when you've decided what it's supposed to be, I think. That place, the park, I remember when that was awful. That's brilliant now, isn't it? You know, you never know what... It's, but most places are just, they're all the same now. There's an old bit that was like a Victorian slum. That's now the bit everyone wants to live in. Then there's a 70s bit that was the bit everyone liked in the 70s. That's now the bit everyone hates. And in that bit, there's a Poundland, a Superdrug, and a branch of the Works. I'm very grateful that my son has got into Scooby-Doo rather than Ben 10, because I think there's lots of different phases of Scooby-Doo over the last 45 years. There's good ones and bad ones, but there's lots of good things about it. I don't like the Scrappy-Doo era. I think that's weak. No one likes that. I don't like Scooby-Dum, his silly cousin. There's no point in that. But the series either side of that are good. The animated films that they've been making the last 15 years or so are great, particularly the last couple, Legend of the Phantasaur and Camp Scare are great. I dislike the live-action films. They're sort of too knowing and sexualised. I don't feel like they're aimed at kids. They're the worst kind of ironic, know-it-all American hipster shit. And I don't like the current animated series called Mystery Incorporated, which is also too knowing. But most of Scooby-Doo is really good. There's really good jokes in it, there's really good plots, and my son learns a lot about history and geography from Scooby-Doo. In the show, I talk about a spurious Scooby-Doo film that I've been made to watch hundreds of times by him, called Scooby-Doo and the Pirate Zombie Jungle Island. That's actually a composite of two films, Pirates Ahoy and Zombie Island. Pirates Ahoy is quite a good one. It's not brilliant, it's all right. It's where they get kidnapped on an ocean liner, and Fred's parents do as well, by these kind of holograms of pirate ghosts. And there's a pirate island in that one that they go to. Zombie Island is set in sort of Louisiana, and it's a bit much for kids, actually. It's a bit like a manga film. A zombie's head gets knocked off in it. So it's a kind of composite of both of those. But on stage, I complain about being made to watch Scooby-Doo all the time with a child, but actually I really, really enjoy it, and I've been reading all the comics with him. I was reading a really great Scooby-Doo comic the other day, where he's backstage in a theatre and there's a murder there, or mystery there, and there's loads of really clever jokes about allusions to Shakespearean plot lines. I thought, who wrote this? I looked, and it was a guy called Dan Abnett, who was on my English course at university. So, small world.
Now, when my son said, is that a ghost, yeah, from the first half? He's not mad, okay? What it is, his main thing that he likes is Scooby-Doo, right? And he watches Scooby-Doo all the time on TV and DVD. So consequently, he's on the lookout for Scooby-Doo stuff in his life, like monsters, ghosts, vampires, pirates, zombies, whatever, because he watches Scooby-Doo all the time. And consequently, I watch Scooby-Doo all the time as well, because I do a lot of the childcare, yeah, by which I mean I watch TV with him.
The structure of the show is sort of a knowing parody of the kind of shows that are in that sort of bracket where they're a bit like theatre one-man shows, but they're also high-end stand-up shows. So when I say a parody of it, I mean it sort of uses it knowingly. And the kind of shows I'm thinking about are people like Daniel Kitson, Ben Moore, Will Adamsdale, or proper sorts of theatre things like your Ken Campbell's or whatever, where there is a kind of rhythm to those sort of one-man shows where there's funny bits and then a meaningful bit and whatever. There are kind of ersatz versions of that happening in mainstreamy stand-up now, where a lot of people are doing shows about important subjects that have sad endings. So what I do in the shows, I basically, as a joke at the beginning, I say, this is going to have a bit of music at the end where it will seem meaningful. I tell everyone I'm going to do that, and then I do it anyway. And hopefully it does still seem meaningful and moving, even though I've flagged it up as the sort of thing you get in these kinds of shows. I love those kinds of shows, by the way. I don't mean it as a criticism of them in any way. But I'm also aware that since I've been on television, I'm probably playing to audiences that have no awareness of that genre of theatre or stand-up. They probably go and see people off the telly, and weirdly, even though I am on the telly now, I don't think that's anything to do with me, and I don't think the people touring off the back of telly shows are anything to do with me. I still think of myself as part of that kind of scene of fringe people that I've been talking about. I don't think they'd really want me to belong to their club anymore. But that's sort of in my mind, I'm still that person. So I kind of felt like, as well as taking on board the structure and the nuances of those kind of shows, I sort of had to explain to audiences of thousands of people that aren't really familiar with them, sort of what they'd be like.
Now, this show is called Carpet Remnant World. Now, since I've been on the telly, I'm picking up a lot of stragglers, people that don't normally come and see me. There's twice as many people as I've played to in Sheffield before here tonight, and the kind of people that come and see people just off the telly, the kind of shows you go and see by comics, they're normally called things like Laugh Time, aren't they? Or Jokerama 6, something like that. Now, if you've seen me before, and I hope you have, I don't like new people coming. You'll know what my shows, they tend to be a relationship between the title and the content. That's the bare minimum of what you should offer, I think. Not so much this year, though. It's not really come together very well, this show. It was supposed to be about idealised notions of society and how we behave as collective groups, and but I've been a bit busy with one thing and another. It's not really worked. But what I will do is about 5 minutes from the end, it's about 10 o'clock, I will repeat the phrase Carpet Remnant World over some music, and that will give the illusion of structure.
The thing that the show ended up being about, that I wasn't expecting it to be about, that I think has saved it from being not as good as it should have been, is that kind of against my will, anxieties about death and mortality started to come up into it. And they started to creep in during the London run. And by Christmas, I realised with a few tweaks, I could actually make that a through line of it. I started thinking about how, in the last few years in the Fringe and at comedy festivals, there's been a lot of people doing shows about, a lot of stand-ups doing shows about a parent dying or their relationship with death. I've not seen any of them, right? I've just read about them. So when Stewart Lee, the comedian, criticises those shows on stage, he might think that. But Stewart Lee, the person, I've never seen them. I don't really have an opinion about whether they're good or bad. I haven't seen any of them. I've just read about them. But they do seem, from what I've read about them, to be very explicitly about dealing with grief and dealing with death. And I sort of think often when we're affected by feelings like that, we don't really know about it. We'll be getting on with something else or trying to write about something else. And it's not until you finish the piece of writing or the job in hand that you realise these worries are playing on you all the time. And certainly a lot of references to death and loss of relatives and my own mortality as I get older started to creep into the show without me planning them. And then when I stepped back, I saw they were all there. So I thought I needed to make a virtue of it. And then what the show ended up as is Stewart Lee, the comedian, thinks he's trying to write a show about idealised societies. He can't do it because it keeps being sidetracked by the fact that all he knows about is childcare and driving around motorways. But underneath all that, what he's trying to block out is a sort of anger about getting old and about the death of relatives. And that's why he goes off on one about Russell Kane's show about his father dying, because he's scared that he's worried about that himself. That's why he's worried about being remembered for a joke about shitted pants when he says it will mean it will just he doesn't want to remember for that. It's why he's annoyed about Bill Hicks getting an easy ride for having only 2 hours of material. He's worried, the comedian Stewart Lee, that when he generates more material, it's not good enough and it just decreases the quality of his own obituary. He's worried about his father having spent 50 years driving around the country and how that compares with him spending 25 years going around the country doing jokes. And obviously the incident of going to the cemetery sort of became pivotal to the show quite late on. So I was glad that this happened by accident, because I would never have sat down and tried to write that kind of serious show. And it sort of wrote itself, and that's a really weird thing to say, because you often with shows, you don't know what's in there until you start doing them. And being a dad and spending a lot of time driving around, I don't do as much work on paper before the show starts as I used to. I tend to get in a small venue like Soho Theatre, improvise on stage and see what comes up. And with this show, it came late, you know. I mean, the first 30 times I did it in the London run, I did it about 80 times in London. This stuff hadn't come together. It's like chipping away at a big block. And in the end, the shape comes out, and it's not necessarily the one you thought it was going to be. And I'm aware this sounds really pretentious, but I'm really happy that the show ended up having this kind of serious thing in it, because I would have felt like a bit of a knob if I'd actually tried to write that. So it happened rather pleasingly by accident. Also, I'd never have set out to write that show because I'm not someone that likes talking about personal things or doing stuff about personal things, and I absolutely wouldn't have done it. But it sort of happened anyway. There's no names mentioned, there's no traceable incidents, but it is there, and I know it's there. But I didn't realise it till really late. And it was a couple of words just sort of tipped it. It was when I changed I changed the phrase degrading your legacy, which I think is something Alexei Sayle said. I changed that to degrading the quality of your own obituary. And I suddenly thought, oh yeah, that's what it's about. And then when I realised there was lots of things about anger, about relatives being taken away, then I sort of noticed it was about something, and I was really, really relieved. Otherwise it would have been pointless. I wish I was dead.
Not dead. I wish I was a dead comedian. Because you love dead comedians, don't you, all of you? You love the dead comedians, don't you? Oh, Frank Carson. Oh, dead. Brilliant, Frank Carson. He's dead. Oh, Ken Goodwin. Oh, dead Ken Goodwin. Oh, he's brilliant. The middle-class people. Oh, dead Bill Hicks. Oh, Bill Hicks. Dead Bill Hicks. Oh, he's brilliant. I wish I was dead Bill Hicks. I wish I could be judged on 2 hours of material. The lazy, dead, fat Bill Hicks. Be easy to be dead, Bill. It's easy being dead. The hard thing, if you're a comedian, is to stay alive. Keep on knocking out a new 2 hours every year, gradually decreasing the quality of your own obituary.
I'm really, really pleased with the set. It's the first time I've taken a set out. I felt doing the bigger rooms, we should do something. And I felt that because the comedian Stewart Lee thought the show was about idealised notions of society and you know, civic architecture and things like that, it should sort of reflect that. And also, carpet remnant world was a good phrase. It suggested textures and physical objects. I think the set's got a little bit of the feel of experimental drama about it, and I'm really pleased about that. It's a bit weirder and more got more of a handmade kind of feel than you normally get in touring telecomic sets. It was designed by a woman called Katie Bellman, and I sat down with her and said, it needs to sound a bit like Autobahn. It needs to look a bit like Autobahn by Kraftwerk sounds. It needs to look like it's a load of carpet, rolls of carpet, but that carpet needs to become a vision of a idealised cityscape. And at no point before that happens do you want the audience to realise that that's what it's going to be. And the actual carpets look so bland after the audience get used to them, that I think they sort of forget they're there, which is what's so great about the lighting change at the end. I'm a sucker for a lighting change at the end of a piece of theatre. There was a great one at the end of a brilliant production I saw of The Passion of St. John, directed by Deborah Warner, by Bach, where just a load of light bulbs came down. One of Will Adamsdale's shows had a great one at the end where little lights he'd put all around the room gradually coalesced into a sort of city. I suspect I may have had that at the back of my mind. At this end of both halves of Jerry Springer the Opera, I was really pleased with the lighting changes and the images they left the audience with. They were largely sabotaged in the West End, first of all by the immediate arrival of ice cream sellers at the front of the stage, spoiling the beautiful effect created, and at the end of the second half by the appalling tacked-on light entertainment finale. But I do think if you can leave people with a change of mood in that way, it's a really nice thing to do, particularly at the end of a comedy show, because even though it's one of the things I criticise the one-man show genre for doing in the show, I do think when people come out for a laugh, if they get that, but you can give them something else at the end, that's a real bonus, and I'm really pleased with it. It's been a good effort, a good team effort of design, working with the ideas. Also getting it around the country, I've had a guy called James Hingley coming around with me, and it's been funny actually because we travel the country in a white van full of rolls of carpet. So we're sort of like decent, ordinary working men with a real job, delivering an actual commodity to a place. Except, of course, we then get it out and stick lights behind it. Well, I don't, not anymore. I used to. I wouldn't do it. You know, I'm preparing the show now, so it's kind of weird. We're sort of we're in a workman's van. We've had an experience of the flavour of work for the first time in decades, which has been good. But you know, it was worth it going out on a limb and thinking what could you do with the set. I think it's really tied the show together nicely, and it makes it feel like more of a piece. And this is a kind of problem I always get into, and I'm asked to do short sets or things at festivals, and I say the problem is I'm touring Carpet Remnant World. I can't pull any material out of it. It all fits together. And when you see Carpet Remnant World on this set, with that end on it, it is all obviously of a piece. And I tried to write a piece, and somehow, I wasn't really aware of doing it, but it did happen.
We're out here this afternoon in the square in Sheffield getting all these carpets in. And they're not here normally, though. We brought them, we have to get them in. They don't get themselves in, do they? The sorcerer's apprentice.
In a lot of shows over the last few years, you're looking for something to kick against. You're looking for something to give the character of the comedian Stewart Lee an emotional drive or anger about something. And normally I've been able to find something professional to complain about. Like in 90s Comedian, it was that I'd worked on Jerry Springer the Opera and it was effectively banned. In 41st Best Stand-Up, it was that the BBC had told me I could do a series and they cancelled it without even a pilot. There's normally something to get hold of, you know. The weird thing about coming to write this show was that fallback position, I couldn't really occupy that anymore because even though we'd been told a third series wasn't happening by the BBC, my career is going demonstrably well. You know, you can't go on stage as part of an 80, 90 show run in a sold-out London theatre and expect people to have some sympathy for you professionally. It would be really, you know, churlish to do that. But then for a bit, there was a great period where in the early stages of Carpet Remnant World, you were able to be a professional moaner because the series had been like massively acclaimed, but it wasn't going to be recommissioned by the BBC. Then there was a weird thing where they said they might recommission it if I would become a kind of culture show presenter and stuff like that, which I didn't want to do. So there was all kinds of things to moan about. And then there was a great period over Christmas where it won 2 British Comedy Awards and it still wasn't being recommissioned. That was quite good fun to complain about that. That provided some sort of emotional drive for the thing. But then after Christmas, it had won 2 British Comedy Awards and it was recommissioned. There was sort of nothing left. And then what happened was all these material about anxieties about death and fear about being remembered in a weird way, that sort of took the place of that. And so the thing that he was annoyed about, the comedian Stewart Lee, in this show was fears of how he'd be remembered and annoyed about people presuming to talk about death. And it was a much better thing and a much more convincing thing for a 44-year-old man to appear to have issues with than whether or not his third series was commissioned. And I think that's done now, you know. I can't do that stuff anymore where one of my fallback positions, and I'm aware of this, is that I don't feel that the comedian Stewart Lee arrogantly does not feel he's getting the recognition he deserves. I think I'm getting more than I deserve now. But what he can do, what he can still do, is in the moment complain that the audience aren't appreciating his genius. And I'm aware I'm going over old ground doing that. But I think on the whole of this tour, I've played to twice as many people as I ever had before. There's 50% of the people in any room have never seen me do that. And it's quite a good fun thing to do. Whether I'll do it again on the next tour, I don't know. A lot of things have been laid to rest on this tour. I'm not, you know, there's not the great, big, extended exercises in form that probably reached their elastic limit in the second series of Comedy Vehicle. I've tried to do it in a more conversational style, and I've been humanised a bit, I think, by talking about family stuff. And what's exciting about that is it means there's somewhere to go, which I hadn't seen coming.
I was quite happy with one night in Sheffield, to be honest, and you've brought friends along, and you can feel it's not as good as it was last time, which is a shame because we're filming it tonight. So thanks. You know, I won some awards. That doesn't help. British Comedy Awards, Because people go, oh, he's won an award, we'll enjoy that. You won't. Winning a British Comedy Award, it's like having a big sign put over your head saying, hey, dicks, come to this. What can you do there? You can't stop people coming, you know. It'll be all right. It's strong down here. I won't even look up there, I don't think. So we'll press on into the void. No, I thought I'd record this here, because last time I was in this theatre, it was fantastic, but the audiences, we've got 2 nights now, more people come, but you can see it's a worse kind of person, isn't it? Shame. It's gone to all this trouble with all these cameras now. Oh, I come to Sheffield, it was brilliant last time. You know, it was, but it's all right, isn't it? It's not going well down here, isn't it? But up there. There's people down here thinking, oh, it's the kind of thing he does. He mucks about like this, it'll be all right. And up there, there's people going, oh, he doesn't... I've not seen him before, he doesn't seem to be able to do stand-up.